Hi there everybody, my name's Mario. I'm the Director at 24/7 Youth Ministry and also a lecturer at Acts 2 College of Mission Evangelisation. I love youth ministry and I'm sure you do too, because that's why you're here, being part of this program. I'm just wondering how often you have gone to a youth group and wondered just what goes on in the planning and the preparation for that youth group. Well, over the next two sessions, we're actually going to have a bit of a conversation about what we really should be thinking about when it comes to planning for a youth group night. But before we start, I want to just maybe talk to you about the fact that there are 6 key things that we should have in mind whenever we're planning our youth group. So number 1 is that you should have a vision. We'll talk about that in a second. Number 2 is that you should have some goals, and those goals are really important, and again, we're going to talk about that. We're also then going to be thinking about how we would plan to achieve those goals. Then we're going to do some preparation, followed by the implementation of our plan. But the whole thing rests on the idea that we should be evaluating right through the time that we are planning for our youth groups. So let's get started, shall we? So when it comes to a vision, I think it's really important that you as a leader in youth ministry really get your head around looking at a particular document. This document is called Anointed and Sent. Anointed and Sent was written by the bishops of Australia in their mindset around making sure that youth ministry had a particular guideline in the way that we go about bringing to life the gospel message to young people. So my encouragement to you is, first and foremost, make sure you have a look at Anointed and Sent. Where might you find it? Just go on to Dr. Google and he'll point you to where Anointed and Sent is. Just make sure you look for the Australian version. So Anointed and Sent has 3 key goals that we are going to try and achieve in youth ministry. So number 1 is that we're really looking after the total spiritual and personal well-being of a young person. Number 2 is that they become responsible and active participants in the life of the church. And number 3, that we would make them disciples of Jesus Christ in the world today. Not that necessarily we will make them, but together we will work to bring that about. Those 3 goals aren't actually the goals that we're going to be talking about over these next 2 sessions, but it's good to have them in mind. There are also 8 key focus areas in Anointed and Sent. There's a 9th section which is all about safeguarding, which I'm sure you're going to get covered as you go through this course that you're going through. But Anointed and Sent gives us the framework from which we then work in youth ministry. It's like our vision for what we're trying to achieve. So with that in mind, if your youth group or your youth ministry doesn't have a clear vision, then my encouragement to you is to work with your leadership team and the others who are responsible for youth ministry to come up with some sort of vision that you are all working towards. Now, the reason I mention this is because sometimes people will come into a youth group or a youth ministry to help out, but they'll come with their own vision. And what they'll do is they try and change the vision of what currently exists or the way that that youth group operates and runs. Here's an example. Sometimes you might get somebody who comes to a youth group and says, "Well, I had a lot of fun, but how come we don't pray the rosary every week at our youth group? Because really we should have Mary at the centre of our youth group here." Well, you see, this person is coming with their own vision for that youth group. And so you have to have a very clear understanding of what you're trying to achieve. The other aspect of a vision is to actually understand that there is a difference between vision and purpose. So purpose is how you go about running your youth ministry. E.g., if you're buying a car, you might decide that you really want a car because you want a lot of power in that car, because you want to speed everywhere you go. Don't do this, by the way, right? But you want a high-powered car. So your vision is that you want a car that has a lot of power to it and makes you feel good driving it and all that sort of stuff. Right? That's your vision for the car that you want to drive. But actually the purpose of the car is to get you from point A to point B. So it doesn't matter whether it's a high-powered car or a car like mine, which is a Mazda 2, not very high-powered. So there's vision and there's purpose. Your vision gives you the why. Why are you running this youth group or this ministry? And the purpose is, what is it meant to do? So if your purpose is that you want to run a youth group to meet the needs of teenagers, then you know how you're going to do that. So it might be with lots of fun and games. You might have a little bit of input there in that youth group, or you might even decide that you like to have guest speakers come in. However, you might also have a different purpose, and your purpose might be that it's for young adults, this youth group. So you'll plan and prepare and do all the things around young adults that is completely different to what you might do with teenagers. So what's your vision and what's your purpose? They're very important in being able to go forward in planning your youth group. So having said vision, we then need to look at what is it that you want to achieve with your youth group. Now you should be thinking about long-term goals, medium-term goals and short-term goals. E.g., long-term goals. How do you see this youth group operating and what is it meant to achieve over the next 2 years? You then might decide you have a 2-year sort of goal that you're aiming for, but to get that 2-year goal achieved, you're going to have to break that down into parts. So you might say at the end of the first year, what are things going to look like? What are we aiming for? And then you might decide, actually, for each of our youth groups that make up our year goal, we're going to have different goals for each one of those youth groups. So you have short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals. I'd also encourage you to think about this method of goal setting, and that's using SMART goals. So SMART goals are that they're specific, S for specific, M stands for measurable. Can you measure the success of your goal? Not just some airy-fairy sort of goal, but we're going to get 20 kids to youth group. How are we going to get 20 kids to youth group? And we measure it. Has to be attainable. Attainable means that when you're thinking about your goals, this is actually something you can achieve, not something that's so high and faluted that in reality you're never likely to achieve it. E.g., you might aim for 2,000 kids at a youth group. Well, let me tell you, probably unattainable, but who knows? Good luck. Then you might have what we call relevant goals. And relevant goals are those goals that are specific to what you are trying to achieve. So relevancy is really important. So remember when we were talking about maybe praying the rosary at our youth group? If your youth group had a Marian spirituality, then praying the rosary might be a relevant goal. But if you're running youth group for teenagers, you know that praying the rosary might be something that they may not be so interested in. So it has to be relevant. And then finally, you should be thinking about timing. So when is this goal going to be achieved by? Remember we talked about long-term, medium-term and short-term. So that helps you really think through really smart goals. Okay, so when it comes to doing our goals or achieving our goals, we then have to go into this next stage. Remember we talked about vision, goal setting, planning. So that's what we're going to look at now. So there's a whole lot of areas when it comes to planning our youth group. Number of things. You might want to start first with who are your key stakeholders. Now your key stakeholders are very important here. So, e.g., your key stakeholder in your parish youth group is your parish priest, because you actually have to make your parish priest pretty happy with the work that you're doing. You might have other key stakeholders, including and primarily thinking about the young people that are coming to youth group. Then, who are the people that are going to help you out with your youth group? So you, being part of the leadership team, you're a vital member of the planning here. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Who else might you think about with as a key stakeholder? What about parents? So what might they think about your youth group? So here's what we do with regards to planning. What would parents want from your youth group? They probably want that your group will be completely safe for their child to attend, whether they're a young adult or whether they're a teenager or in primary school, right? They want a very safe place. So how are you planning to ensure that you have a safe youth group? Things like doing a health safety check. So particularly in this time where we're looking at things like the COVID pandemic, what are your things that are healthy and safe? What about the way that the room is structured? Are there any impediments to people's safety in the room? What about the outside environment? So things like that you should be thinking about. So making sure you've got a safety checklist, nice plan. What about a running sheet for the way that the night works out? So what are you going to do when people come in the door? How are you planning to make them feel like they're going to be having a great time here? They're not going to be lonely. They're going to have somebody who's going to be able to come over and talk to them. Oh, by the way, have you got somebody who's going to register them in? What if they're a new person? What do their parents need to know about coming to this youth group? So you have to have those plans. Now, if you're planning with the mindset that you have to cater for stakeholders, your parish priest might want to know what it is that you are actually doing in that youth group that night that might aid in faith formation. So, has your planning thought about what input is going to happen during that youth group? Also, let's just think about this. You as a leader, you're coming to a youth group. If you're a volunteer leader coming to help out, the last thing you want to do is to come to that youth group and feel like you have no role to play. Your planning should actually help everybody who's coming along to help out have a key role. And that key role should have all the tasks identified clearly with a description about what's expected of you. So there's a fair bit to do when it comes to planning. Now, planning is about the way you see how things will operate. Next time, we'll get together and we'll talk about what it means to prepare your plan and to make that really relevant for everybody. We'll also have a look at what it means to implement your plan, and then we'll have a quick conversation around evaluating that plan. Look forward to seeing you next time.